Thank you all so much for coming out on a record hot day for September 12th in Washington. I'm Pam Kennedy. I'm a research analyst with the East Asia program, and it's my pleasure to introduce a new publication of the East Asia program, the Taiwan Security Brief. Our inaugural volume has 3 articles analyzing non-traditional security threats in Taiwan: online disinformation, cybersecurity, in the digital economy, and energy security. And our 3 authors are emerging experts on Taiwan. And so the point of this program is to introduce or amplify new voices in the field and hopefully keep the policy dialogue on Taiwan fresh and always evolving in the Washington community. So you can download the ebook because we are going green and we did not print this one from our website. It will be on the home page, easy to find, the purple document. And now I will introduce our 3 authors. So seated to my left is Dr. Lauren Dickey. She is a research analyst with the Center for Naval Analyses over in Clarendon in the China Indo-Pacific Division. And she is currently researching Chinese military strategy and Chinese activities in the Indo-Pacific. And for us, she wrote an article on online disinformation in Taiwan, specifically focusing on disinformation from China. In the middle is Bo Junjing. He's a PhD candidate at the Lau China Institute at King's College in London, so thank you for coming all the way from the UK. His research focuses on Taiwan's foreign policy towards Southeast Asia, as well as the US, Taiwan, China triangle, and international political economy in the Indo-Pacific. So we've asked him to look at the digital economy and the cybersecurity threats therein. And last but not least, Chen Shenghong, a former research fellow at Stimson, returns as a WSD Honda fellow at the Pacific Forum in Honolulu. He's researching energy and development, so we asked him to take a look at Taiwan's energy security challenges and how we should be thinking about that in the future. So thank you very much. We'll start with Lauren. What was your article about?
Perfect. So before I get started, I want to thank Stimson, Pam, and Jason for all of their efforts in putting this all together. It's a great initiative, and I'm really happy to be here today. Second sort of disclaimer is that the views and what I'm about to say are my own today and do not represent those of my employer or the U.S. Navy. So I'm going to start my remarks with a point that everybody in this room, you're all familiar with. Taiwan is on the front line of Chinese pressure and activities that are aimed at undercutting the island's democracy. And the CCP clearly has a vision of building a strong, prosperous China, of which Taiwan is an inalienable part, and reunification is a major item on the CCP agenda. If you look at the issue of securing reunification from Beijing's perspective, the CCP has relied on various traditional tools of statecraft to try and woo, undermine, or otherwise persuade the government and people of Taiwan that reunification is in the island's best interests or that reunification is an inevitable future. This includes, for instance, socioeconomic tactics that bind the interests of people and businesses from Taiwan closer to the Chinese economy. It also includes an increasingly capable and confident People's Liberation Army, the PLA, that even in steady state operations seeks to deter any actions that Taiwan may unilaterally take to change the status quo. As various statements from the PLA have made clear, including the most recent National Defense White Paper, military force remains an option that is on the table for securing the objective of reunification. My paper is actually looking a bit beyond these traditional tools of statecraft to consider how China is leveraging online disinformation campaigns to shape public opinion in Taiwan, undercut democratic processes, and/or gain public traction on narratives that are believed by the party to work more favorably in its interests of reunification. Before I get to sort of my main takeaways and what you will read when you download the ebook, I actually want to spend just a moment talking about the concept of disinformation, mostly because we're bombarded with that term. We hear disinformation, misinformation, and fake news, as well as the traditional concepts of propaganda and political warfare, and they're all related. There's a really good Venn diagram just waiting to be made of these different concepts, but I think it's worth stopping to talk about the term for just a moment. So in my paper, I'm focusing on the non-traditional security challenge of Chinese disinformation. I define disinformation as the intentional dissemination of false information. Facebook also has a really great concept for for disinformation. They don't call it disinformation, but they call it coordinated inauthentic behavior. And that's used to refer to something that is coordinated across multiple accounts, that is intentionally misleading, and that is a behavior. It's trying to impact or affect what people do and not just the content that they read. Disinformation can include authentic material used in a deliberately wrong context, manipulated images or video content, often disseminated by bots or content farms, and fake or spoof websites that are meant to look like ones that you and I are familiar with. So while disinformation and its effects upon political leadership or society may not be considered part and parcel of what is, quote, traditional security, I think there's a strong and growing awareness in Taiwan and elsewhere that these intentional, targeted disinformation campaigns can have a significant effect upon national security. Targeted disinformation campaigns, such as what we've seen unfold in Taiwan, may undercut public confidence in political leadership or national defenses. Disinformation may also determine which narratives are dominant in the online media. Manipulated content that is promoted by well-seasoned bots, i.e. bots that have been developed over time rather than parachuted in last minute. These sorts of content transfers are clearly targeted at exploiting divisions in Taiwan society and disseminating a narrative that in some cases is clearly aligned with Beijing's political views and goal of reunification. So while disinformation may be viewed by some as a non-traditional security domain, I would argue that the potential and actual ramifications of Chinese disinformation activities resemble traditional security challenges. Disinformation campaigns ultimately seek to limit, undermine, or altogether prevent the people of Taiwan from enjoying their own democratic freedoms. In terms of takeaways from my research, one of the things that continues to resonate with me in this space, it's one that's continually changing, is just how expansive the challenge of disinformation is for Taiwan. Part of this is due to the reach of technology. Taiwan society, as I write in my paper, is heavily, heavily connected, both in terms of internet and social media penetration, as well as the above average mobile phone subscriptions per capita. For anyone that's been to Taiwan as of late, I'm sure you've seen everyone is on their phones pretty much as we are in the United States, and they're using apps not just like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, but also Line and even a little bit of Wechat from China. Though I will note that there's a lot less Wechat used in Taiwan than I personally had expected. It's around 32% of internet users. Beyond the sheer number of apps and mediums through which false information may be intentionally disseminated, the shared language on both sides of the Taiwan Strait, albeit with some slight pronunciation and vocabulary differences, does not inhibit the ease of creating or disseminating disinformation. The other reason that disinformation is such a tricky problem for Taiwan to tackle is something that other countries, governments, and even private corporations are dealing with, and that's the challenge of attribution. Given China's long historic track record of efforts and tactics to influence the people of Taiwan and create momentum for a reunification narrative, it's not unreasonable to think that many of the disinformation campaigns popping up across Taiwan's social media may originate in the PRC. But with tunneling technology, VPNs, and other ways of obfuscating where content really comes from, it's hard to always peg disinformation to China, and it's even more difficult to say this is a coordinated, collective, state-supported or guided activity to undermine Taiwan. On this challenge, I would actually point those in the audience or online to the recent decision by Facebook and Twitter both to explicitly identify coordinated state-backed operations to shape narratives about Hong Kong. These narratives were found by Facebook and Twitter engineers on their two respective platforms, and it was really the first time that disinformation organized by China and attributed explicitly to China has been outed on these platforms. Given these revelations, we could surmise that similar large-scale efforts may currently be underway and may be targeting Taiwan and the people of Taiwan, but whether Facebook and Twitter are willing to similarly and publicly out the malicious activities and remove the content or the accounts is an open question. Which brings me to sort of the last portion of my remarks, which is the recommendations. I think during the research process, what became really clear to me, talking to people and listening to cyber talks on YouTube and just pulling as much data as I could, the cold hard reality with disinformation is that it's impossible to totally eliminate disinformation. There's always going to be information gaps or societal divides that a malicious actor, China or otherwise, will seek to exploit. That said, I would posit to you today that one of the most effective ways, and perhaps the only effective way to combat disinformation, is for private companies to take the lead. Democratic governments are somewhat handicapped and cannot go around stripping down content or ordering companies to strip down content because that's just not how democracies work. But democratic governments, Taiwan and elsewhere, can work with companies to identify the content that is disinformation and the actors that may be behind it and figure out a way together in close public-private cooperation to tackle some of these issues. One of the challenges that Taiwan has is that it has limited influence over social media companies. So if disinformation is being spread on platforms that are owned by the Chinese, whether it's Wechat or perhaps more traditional media outlets like the China Times newspaper or Zhongtian television, which both are owned by the Want group, there's no chance that the current Taiwan government, in my opinion, can do anything about that false information just because all of the servers and data and most of the people are probably going to be based in the PRC. Where I do see more potential areas of opportunity is where the false information is being intentionally spread over platforms that are owned or headquartered here in the United States, such as Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and YouTube. I think there's huge potential for the current DPP government to say, hey, we want to work with these US companies that unfortunately are hosting disinformation in some cases, and we want to help them to understand what actors are behind it, what tactics and patterns exist in these disinformation campaigns, thereby helping the Western social media companies and tech giants to better understand and calibrate their algorithms against these disinformation activities. So really, for me, the biggest recommendation is that there's a need for buy-in, not just from the Taiwan government, that it wants to do something about disinformation, which I would argue there's already sort of a minimum threshold of, but the tech giants out in Silicon Valley need to start taking this challenge seriously too. At a grassroots level, and I think my colleagues are also going to talk a little bit more about this, there's significant space to bolster media literacy. So the current Tsai administration has tried to correct or clarify false information. There are several web pages that are in Chinese that are all about exposing fake news and disinformation, and the Tsai administration has been very outspoken when there's false news intentionally spread in correcting those sorts of narratives. But to do that effectively requires a lot of manpower and a lot of resources. You have to be quick to respond and actively responding with narratives that are compelling and provide strong counter evidence. Without solid evidence to counter disinformation, humans will do what we as humans do best, which is to find another narrative that fits with our worldviews. And I think that figuring out that delicate balance of how to teach people about disinformation and help them become more aware of how to themselves suss out what disinformation is something that the government has to grapple with. In short, combating the spread of disinformation is no small task, and I think that how Taiwan responds to this challenge in real time is particularly important given the 2020 elections that are fast approaching in January. Plenty more to say. There's lots of examples from my paper that I didn't talk about yet, but I am cognizant that I have two other co-panelists and co-paper authors that I want to hear from too. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Okay, so let's use this. I'm talking about cybersecurity, so I need to use the PowerPoint. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jin Bo-jun. I'm currently pursuing a PhD studies at King's College London. Thank you so much for having me today and giving me a chance to fly across the pond to Washington. It's always great to be back to DC. It has been hacked already. All right. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Well, maybe. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So my policy brief is on Taiwan cybersecurity in the digital economy. In the coming 40 minutes, I will share my thoughts on this important non-traditional issue facing Taiwan, and I'll use the slides. Okay. All right. As we are becoming more reliant on the digital tools, such as smartphones, Internet of Things, cloud, we surely are benefiting from the convenience brought by these technologies. However, they also trigger a lot of cybersecurity concerns. For example, the increasing number of IoT-connected devices are key for the fourth industrial revolution, but it also means the expansion of attack services because it offers more points of entry to hackers, thereby exposing the network to outside threats. But while Taiwan is fully embracing the IoT trend and playing a significant role in supplying IoT sensors and chips to the world, its leaders in the private sector, together with other East Asia and the Pacific business leaders, rate cyber attacks as the top number one risk of doing business in the region. So this is according to World Economic Forum's report published last year. Okay, so what makes Taiwan a unique case? On the one hand, Taiwan has a very strong industries in ICT, semiconductors, and consumers electronics. On the other hand, as we all know, pretty familiar with in this town, there are cross-strait relations and dynamics. So Taiwan's distinctive status in the high-tech value chains and geopolitical configuration has made it a high-profile target for cyber attacks. The TSMC WannaCry ransomware incident in 2018 is a good example for private sector. As for the public sector, the government faced about 20 to 40 million hacking attempts per month in 2017, and most of which were believed to be launched by Chinese hackers. Against this backdrop, President Tsai Ing-wen has reiterated that cybersecurity is national security, 治安及国安, which is a catchphrase she uses at every single cybersecurity or digital economy events, occasions. It is a title for the inaugural National Cybersecurity Strategy Report, this one, published by NSC in Taiwan in September last year. And this report and the Executive Yuan, 行政院's National Cybersecurity Program of Taiwan, or the Phase 5 program, highlight the Tsai Ing-wen's administration's ultimate vision to build a safe and reliable digital nation. If we look at the current administration's two flagship economic policies, we can probably understand why the president has made cybersecurity a priority. The first program, called DIGI+, aims to grow the island's digital economy. The second program, 5+2 plan, promotes growth in smart machinery, the Internet of Things, or they call Asia Silicon Valley, green energy, biomedical, and defense, plus new agricultural and the circular economy. But to achieve these goals, a healthy cybersecurity ecosystem is a key factor, as any massive cyber breaches would take a heavy toll on Taiwan's confidence in digitization. This is why Dr. Li Decai, Li Decai, this person is a key cybersecurity policymaker at NSC at the highest level, emphasizes that no cybersecurity, no digital economy. In other words, cybersecurity is a sine qua non of Taiwan's digital dream. Yeah. Okay. Just like all other ambitious goals in the world, there is no shortage of challenges for Taiwan to enhance cybersecurity in the digital economy. But before we jump into that discussion, I would like to show this, the evolution of Taiwan's cybersecurity regime. Although it's a little bit tiny, but I'll try to explain. So the Phase 1 program for cybersecurity was inaugurated in 2001 under President Chen Shui-bian. During the time, they established the National Information and Communications Security Task Force, NICST, to serve as the platform for cybersecurity policy planning and implementation, as well as interagency coordination. I will talk about NIST a lot, so this acronym maybe you can just remember it. And the program was later carried out by Ma Ying-jeou between 2008 and 2016. So there's a continuation of policies across the party lines. But here I want to highlight that while the first 3 phases of the cybersecurity policy focus on improving intra-governmental measures, the 4th phase began to emphasize the importance of collaboration with the private sectors to enhance cybersecurity mechanism, as well as boosting a domestic cybersecurity industry. Okay. But certainly the previous programs had improved Taiwan's cybersecurity landscape, but there are 3 major challenges for the Tsai administration. The first is regarding the effectiveness of organizational and legal structure. I mentioned about the important role of NICST, but before 2016, its Secretariat, Office of the Information and Communications Security, was only at the ad hoc level. Also, there was no cybersecurity law regulating the island cyberspace. In the first 2 years of her tenure, Tsai Ing-wen successfully upgraded the above office into a Department of Cybersecurity in August 2016 and pushed the LY Legislative Yuan to pass the Cybersecurity Management Act in May last year. So these 2 are definitely good progress, especially they have normalized DCS, Department of Cybersecurity, to run the whole NICST is really helpful for the cybersecurity regime. However, how to properly designate it, which private entities are considered critical infrastructures, CI, providers, and how to streamline SOP for cybersecurity incidents remain challenging tasks for the government. The second challenge is skills shortage. Although this is a global phenomenon, Taiwan faces a tougher situation as it has suffered a significant brain drain in recent years. This has made both private and public sectors hard to get qualified professionals, as most of them are right now working in Silicon Valley and other mega cities for these reasons, like higher salary, career potential. So in the case of government, the ideal headcount for the full-time cybersecurity professionals is about 1,200, but there are only about 670 professionals in the workforce right now, so big shortage. The final challenge relates to the current administration's goal to achieve cybersecurity industry autonomy. As you can see, the recent output of Taiwan cybersecurity companies was only about $1.25 billion, and there were fewer than 200 local companies in Taiwan, most of which are SMEs. This can be attributed to the fact that most Taiwanese end users rely on foreign products such as Symantec, Checkpoint, Cisco for their security needs in their cyber domain. Also, let me try different. Okay. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Wow. Busy. Okay. Too much reliant on foreign products, but as pointed out by some scholars and practitioners I talked to, the problem is in Taiwan, the risk-averse atmosphere in the capital market that neither encourage nor incentivize companies to invest in R&D. is a major obstacle along Taiwan cybersecurity industry development trail. This is a Taiwan cybersecurity market landscape produced by IT Home, a website in Taiwan. And you can see, well, this is quite too small, but I'll just point it out. Maybe there's an Amazon somewhere. Yeah, AWS. And then there's the Taiwan, the most famous one is probably Trend Micro. 趋势科技 is somewhere right over here. Yeah, okay. All right. For the current policies, what are the remedies for these difficulties? First of all, the Tsai administration has transformed the cybersecurity regime into what they call Iron Triad, 资安铁三角, consisting of the office under NSC, and the Department of Cybersecurity under the EY, and another newly founded National Communication and Cybersecurity Center, NCCSC, under the National Communications Commission, NCC. I would just highlight the important role of, the NCC here is, the NCC here is in charge of critical information infrastructure, CII. Department of Cybersecurity, as I mentioned, is very important. I will just highlight that part because it's the center of this. So during the research, I was quite shocked to find out that there were only 2 full-time employees in the previous form of DCS. So you're talking about NICST and DCS, all the big dreams, but only 2 people there. I mean 2 full-time, but plus other just on the temporary basis. Now there's 16 plus other 5 to 7 staff from other agencies. So making it like a 21 to 23 member brain trust. So I will argue this really helps the government to streamline political efforts and translate rhetoric into reality. So they have done this, making the Cybersecurity Act a reality, setting up the NISAC, and strengthening the Taiwan CERT mechanism. And they are going to upgrade the National Security Operations Center and SOC quite soon, and also to put the regulations under the Cybersecurity Act into force for private entities designated as critical infrastructure operators. In terms of the policies on cybersecurity industry autonomy, the first related policy was the establishment of the Information Communication and Electronic Force Command, ICEF, as the 4th branch of ROC Armed Force in June 2017. And as the Tsai administration strives to connect cybersecurity development with the defense industry under its 5+2 plan, as mentioned before, the formation of ICEF can open more cybersecurity contracts to domestic companies, thereby helping Taiwan to upgrade its capabilities and self-sufficiency of the cybersecurity and defense industry. The second policy is to allocate more budget to the field of cybersecurity. Over the past 2 years, the cybersecurity budget has more than doubled from $48 million USD to $119 million US dollar. And the administration also regulates that for the future government plans that exceed $32 million US dollars in budget, at least 5% must be used for cybersecurity. For this level is 6%. For the level below $3 million US dollars, 7% requirement. Okay. All right. With the increased financial resources, the government wanted to double the output of Taiwan's cybersecurity industry in 8 years and add about 4,300 people into the workforce related to cybersecurity. However, the success of the cybersecurity initiatives still hinges on the competitiveness of the services or products offered by the Taiwanese companies. For example, the government in recent years has urged its civil servant to use an app called Joker, Drika. I don't even know how to pronounce it in English. But that app is for instant communications developed by Taiwan's Industrial Technology Research Institute, ITRI. However, most government officials are still relying on Line, the Japanese Line app, for their on-the-job communications, despite the confidential nature of their work due to its user-friendly interface and large pool of users. So that's still the case. Anyway, but finally, the policy recommendations. Can Taiwan have the digital cake and eat it? Here are some recommendations. First is to continue to partner with the US through its two bilateral platforms. One is the Digital Economic Forum, DEF. Second one is Global Cooperation and Training Framework, GCTF, to hold joint programs germane to cybersecurity issues in the digital era. Since their launches in 2015 under Mainzhou, there have been 4 major events under DEF and 19 workshops under GCTF until this week. GCTF covers a broader range of topics ranging from public health to women's empowerment to energy efficiency. However, GCTF also touches upon such digital issues as e-commerce and cybersecurity. In May of this year, GCTF brought together 41 participants from 25 Indo-Pacific countries, including Chile and Mexico for the first time to join a workshop on network security and emerging technologies in Taipei. Given the rapid pace of digital change, this kind of workshop or exchange program should be further expanded by Taiwan. The inaugural Taiwan European Union EU dialogue on digital economy in June this year is a good example and should be referenced as a blueprint for future cooperation with other regional partners such as Japan and Singapore. Okay. Second recommendation is to turn the vulnerable into the valuable, or to turn lemons into lemonade. As pointed out by many scholars, Taiwan has been recognized as one of the top targets of advanced cyber attacks globally, especially those in the format of advanced persistent threats, APTS. Also, experts could find many more iterations of Chinese malware in Taiwan because Chinese hackers had been testing tools on the island before taking them globally, according to the head of the Department of Cybersecurity, Jian Hongwei. So in view of the lemons, Taiwan's ongoing preparation to share Chinese hacker data with private companies to help train AI software to combat future cyber attacks is a step forward and for this lemonade goal. Finally, the government should proactively expand contact with the cybersecurity community in the private sector. They should seek to hold more conferences related to cyber issues or digital economy through its ongoing strategy review board mechanism under the EY Executive Yuan. The board's conventions focus on cybersecurity industry in 2017, 5G application in 2018, and smart living display this year. So it's an existing mechanism, should be continued. And moreover, the government should continue to send its officials to join the world's largest hacker conferences, such as Blackhat briefings and DEF CON, to keep up with the cybersecurity trends. And I know they're doing it, but I hope they can send more officials from the Department of Cybersecurity. Last but not the least, there are many Taiwanese ICT and cybersecurity professionals working on the global stage, as mentioned before. The government officials should reach out to them to gather latest technological and commercial information on the ground. As far as I know, they are doing that already, but I hope it is not just for a one-time meal or happy hour, but could form some kind of partnership that could help Taiwan develop its cybersecurity and digital economy in the long term. All right, with that, thank you very much and happy Mid-Autumn Festival today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Chunshang, thank you.
Okay, yeah. First of all, I want to thank you, the Stinson Center, to inviting me to back here to present my finding about Taiwan energy security. I just here last year, so it's always happy to be here. So in my article, actually, I will explore the challenges of nature in Taiwan energy security and what those challenges impact Taiwan energy security and how's our government's current policy to address those challenges, and with finally my policy recommendation. So firstly, I want to talk a little bit about the definitions of energy security, because energy security actually concept is dimensional, and there's no one single definition to describe the energy security. So, but here I refer to the International Energy Agency. As I mentioned about the energy security is the uninterrupted availability of energy sources at affordable prices. But they also mentioned there's a short-term goal and long-term goal of the energy security, especially the long-term goals you need to in line with economic development as well as the sustainable environmental need. So actually, it reflects that energy security is no longer about the security of a supply, but it's also linked with the human security, because we need to consider about the impact of energies on the human, on public health, like caused by climate change or air pollution, as well as the environmental problems. So I think this is different with the traditional security concept, because it's focused. Traditional security concepts focus especially on the state, but for the non-traditional security, like energy security, we also consider not only the state, but also the human beings as an individual. And to start talking about the Taiwan energy security challenges, but first of all, I want to show you about our the two graphs about our Taiwan energy profile. But the first one is our primary energy supply profile. So actually, you will find that Taiwan primary energy supply mostly come from oil, coal, and natural gas, like oil with the 48.25%, and the coal is 29.38%, and finally natural gas is 15.18%. And other energy sources, including renewable energies, only represents 7.50% of the energy supply. And also, as electricity is the major form of the energy consumption in Taiwan, so energy mix is also important in Taiwan. So here is our Taiwan energy mix for electricity. So you'll find here, actually, the coal fire and LNG, language natural gas fire, is the two major sources, accounting for, like, the coal fire accounts for 45.53%, and LNG fire accounts for 34.26%. And other resources like renewable energy, except hydropower, account for 2.96%. Among that, solar is 0.99%, and wind power is 0.61%. So we already have a brief understanding of our current energy profile. So later, I'm going to talk about what exactly the challenges in Taiwan and what's the impact on that. So the first one is the lack of sufficient energy source diversification and heavy reliance on energy import. So as Taiwan is an island and without sufficient indigenous energy production, so our energy import actually is really high, especially we are energy import dependent. It's between 97% and 98% for the past 10 years. And also we are strongly reliant on imported oil, coal, and LNG. And our energy supply actually also highly relies on the two sources, which is the oil and coal in the past 10 years. So these challenges will make Taiwan's energy availability be vulnerable for two factors. The first one is the fluctuations of the global market, such as the oil market. And the second one is the change to its exporter geopolitical condition. So I think the recent example is on June 13 this year. So there's the attack on the oil tanker, and this is from the Middle East to Taiwan State Oil Refiners, CPC Corporation. So after that attack, actually the global oil price rose, and it also increased Taiwan oil prices as well. And apart from oil, because our most of Taiwan's current LNG imports is most travel through the South China Sea and the Malacca Strait. Actually, so if there are any conflicts in these regions, will also probably will harm the Taiwan LNG supply. So the second challenging is insufficient energy infrastructure and vulnerability of infrastructure to interruption. So actually, Taiwan is the world's 5th largest LNG importer. So this is important to consider about our LNG infrastructure in Taiwan. Taiwan right now only have the 2 LNG receiving terminal, and with the supply capacity of 60 million tons per year. But we consider about another major LNG importing nations like Japan. But actually, Japan right now has their 34 receiving terminal and with the 40% utilization rate. But Taiwan only have the 2 receiving terminal. And according to our CPC Corporation, the total utilization rates of Taiwan's LNG receiving terminal has already reached out 103%. So this overuse will increase the operation risks of our receiving terminal. And also, in addition, we need to also consider about cyber attacks, because there's a cyber attack discussion on the critical infrastructure, such as energy infrastructures. And the cases we can think about the Ukraine in December 2015, and there's a power companies in Western Ukraine's reporting interference, leaving the regions without energies, and the Bulgarian Security Service accused Russia in a cyber attack. So we can think about there's a cases emergence. Is there's cases right now, so we can think about whether it will also pose a threat on Taiwan's energy infrastructure. And the third one is the rising energy imports expenditures. So according to our Bureau of Energy, so the energy imports expenditures and burden on the population in Taiwan actually is increasing. So this will influence our national economic growth and also increasing our burdens on our Taiwanese populations. And finally, is the nuclear waste from nuclear power plant. As Taiwan still uses nuclear power right now, we have 3 operating nuclear power plants right now. But the nuclear waste problem from the power plants already developed into the domestic debates in Taiwan, actually, especially whether to restart the constructions of the Longmen nuclear power plant, or we also so-called number 4 nuclear power plants in Taiwan, which has deferred in 2014. And supporters say that the nuclear power actually is less polluting than fossil fuel and can be the best power sources. But the opponent says that there is no good solution for the final disposal of the nuclear waste. And also in Taiwan is prone to earthquakes, and we probably will face the similar accidents like Japan's Fukushima nuclear disaster. So this is also a debate in Taiwan right now. So this is already talk about the 4 challenges and impacts on energy security in Taiwan. So our government have already engaged to solve the energy security challenges. Especially our government have the 2 purpose. The one is to increase our energy diversification. The second one is increase our energy independence. So for energy diversification, we have 2 parts. First, we try to diversify our energy import sources. For example, we take LNG, for example. We previously mainly imported LNG like from Indonesia, for example, but right now we also increase LNG from the US as well. And we also, our CPC Corporation actually also work with a Japan energy company to import LNG from Mozambique. So this is also reflects that we are trying to diversify our import sources. A second one, we also want to diversify our energy sources, especially our government focus on the facilitates the renewable energy development. And because developing renewable energy development can not only increase our diversify our energy source, but also can increase our energy independence, because renewable energy is indigenous energy sources. Our government already announced a target for our future energy mix. Actually, it's for 50% natural gas, 30% of coal, and 20% renewable energy by 2025. And our government also have already implemented the 2 promotion plan, especially focused on the solar power and the wind power. And we also use the feed-in tariff policy, which is a policy tool that can attract more renewable energy investment in Taiwan. And in 2017, actually, we amend our electricity law to permit the consumer to buy electricity directly from an independent clean electricity generator. So it can liberalize our Taiwan's renewable energy supply market. And also, just after amending our electricity law, in 2017, our government also established the National Renewable Energy Certification Center to implement a regulation in relation to our Taiwan Renewable Energy Certificate, TREC. So the corporation in Taiwan, you can buy the TREC as a proof of the use of green electricity and show your social responsibility. And our government also amended the Renewable Energy Development Act to require large electricity user to the certain ratio of their power supply coming from renewable energy. So, and finally, our government also promote for the smart grid, which can enable the integration of a large-scale renewable energy generation, and as well as we use it promotes for a smart meter investment, which can increase our consumer size, their ability to manage their demand and minimize the greenhouse gas emissions. So after talking about our current policy, actually I want to talk is finally my recommendation. I think the most important task to address energy security challenges in Taiwan is to increase energy diversification independence, but without influencing the stability of energy supply, and we need to manage the growing energy demand. And this should also not only is state responsibility, but we also need to more public participation together to work together to address energy security challenges. But my first recommendation, I would say, is about a smart grid security mechanism. Because we are promoting smart grid, and we need to think about the potential threats, for example, like cybersecurity. The cybersecurity in the smart grid has already raised attention because the cyber attack actually can eventually compromise the stability of the grid through the disrupting information access to undermine power delivery or exposing user information and providing unauthorized access to the system. So because our government is actively promoting the development of a smart grid system, so it is important to enforce the smart grid security mechanism and also strengthen the intrusion detection and prevention system of a smart grid system. And we can, as the Japan, Korea, and the US, it also developed a smart grid system. So I think we can also share experience with those countries and see how can we upgrade or promote the cyber to promote the cybersecurity mechanism in our smart grid system. And the second one is with the U.S. With the U.S., because we are trying to increase our energy, try to diversify our energy source, and we want to increase the LNG. And actually, the U.S. launched the enhancing development and growth through the energy, which we call the Asia EDGE, in July 2018, just last year. And this wants to strengthen energy security of U.S. allies and partners and expanding access to affordable and reliable energy. So I think that Taiwan can increase their energy LNG import from the U.S. and seek more cooperation opportunity with the U.S. since we're trying to increase the LNG's import, LNG sources. And we understand that the Asia EDG just very beginning process, but we need to wait and see more contents in this policy. But I think it has the possibility to work together under the Asia Age. And also, Taiwan can consider using what the Jimbo had already mentioned about the Gctf. We can hold also like the workshop to address energy security challenges together in Taiwan as well. And also, we need to consider, we also have the opportunity to work with Japan. For example, like as our government, finally, we want to phase out nuclear power in the future. We want to phase out nuclear by 2025. But we also raise our need of natural gas in the future. So, but how can we ensure energy independence, but also increasing the natural gas usage? So I think the government consider the relatively new source of energy, which is the methyl hydrate. Methyl hydrate is a resources that can extract natural gas from it. And in 2013, actually, Japan have successfully extracted natural gas from a methyl hydrate deposit. So apart from Japan, China and the US are also engaged in exploring the uses of the methyl hydrate. So though the methyl hydrate, there also is a controversial source because they also have an environmental impact. But I think the Taiwanese government can still consider about the studying the feasibility of this source and work with Japan. Especially the research team have already found that there's the methyl hydrate sources in the western parts of Taiwan. So this is possible to extract, to think about the feasibility of extracting these sources. And so the other two, final two policy recommendations, especially focus on the private sector participation as well as the public participation. So for the private sector part, I think the Taiwanese government, we need to increase communication more with renewable energy developers, especially to establish an affordable, attractive feed-in tariff. Because we use a feed-in tariff tool, but last year we tried to decrease our FIT rates, but decrease the FIT rates actually will increase the cost of renewable energy developer, and it will also increase their interest to invest in Taiwan. Though finally this year, our government finally we changed our policy. We lower the costs like we do for the FIT rate, but they will also cause the private sector to think about the frequent policy change of the Taiwanese government. So I think the Taiwanese government should, when they want to establish FIT rates, they should communicate more with the private sector, especially renewable energy developer, to avoid like frequently change the policy and establish the attractive FIT rate. And finally, it's about public participation. So I think the most important part is we can not only talk about the energy supply to address energy security, but we should also think about how can we manage the energy consumption, energy demand side. So I think if we can achieve energy security through the energy demand control, and I think the most important part is to raise our public awareness on energy saving. So we can do is like the energy saving literacy, which our government already done. Our central government, our local government, we all do the energy saving, energy relating literacy to increase our public's knowledge about energy. But we need is to create the framework to integrate with the local government resources and central government resources to promote energy literacy and provide like a transparent, like provide more information for the public to access, like the more transparency information, and also provide like educational material for the young people. That's, I think, is an important part to increase our awareness about the energy usage. If we can control our energy demand, actually we can decrease the energy consumption, and also we can lower energy supply. So finally, we can address the energy security problem. So I think this is my final policy recommendation for energy security, and we are happy to talk more later. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chen-Sheng. So to briefly summarize, I'm seeing several themes in the recommendations. So these non-traditional security threats that also blur the line between traditional and non-traditional security. They are rich in opportunities for Taiwan to cooperate with international partners and also between the Taiwan government, civil society, the public. Public-private partnership and dialogue, government to industry, government to people is really important, whether it's through establishing a feed-in tariff that makes Taiwan competitive in renewable energy, or between the government in Asia, Silicon Valley, or between social media giants, not only in Taiwan, but in the US, maybe also Line in Japan. And then working together on new technology to build new habits or new options. So it's about getting people engaged not only as a part of companies or as government workers, but in their individual lives. Media literacy, energy saving, education, encouraging more people to enter computer science programs so that the shortage of cybersecurity workers, which is a worldwide problem, can be rectified. And then finally, using existing platforms like the Gctf, the DEF, and then other international platforms like DEF CON, the Blackhat briefings, to better build those people-to-people relations, but also overcome the, I guess, with problems that seem so insurmountable as the ones we've discussed today, to overcome that inertia that comes with trying to start something new. So at Stimson in the East Asia program, we're always looking for ways to increase cooperation between the US and East Asia. So what would be your first step recommendation to policymakers in Taiwan, in the US, or in other partners like Japan, to take like a first step towards mitigating the problems that you've discussed today?
All right, so I will start probably the first step and the easiest step, and one that I'm going to make an assumption is already going on. So I think my recommendation is more about just continuing in a path that's probably already currently underway, is to talk about combating disinformation. There's a lot of sort of closed door, quiet diplomacy and conversations that I'm sure goes on between Taiwan and the US, and we see some of this manifest in the mechanisms that my colleagues have talked about. But talking about disinformation in those spaces is important, and I would argue necessary. And talking about disinformation at a more sort of granular or tactical level is also really important. Not just talking about the problem and what to do about it, but bringing into the conversation the patterns and the trends and the sort of information about disinformation that can help both the US and Taiwan better identify the problem to get at it.
Okay, I think, yeah, this is working now. Okay. I would just say I think there's as I mentioned before, there's a very strong Taiwanese community out in the U.S. and Singapore when I was there. Very strong, and they're very top, and they're in their fields. And I know the government, our de facto embassies, or represented offices. Should I use microphone? Okay. But I mean, just the outreach part, I think the government should do more to reach out to these communities and to have a deep discussion. For example, when I did my military service, all my colleagues there were mostly ended up in, because where I did the political warfare officer, and most of them have a double E background and ended up working in the States, and for Google Cloud, and they're serving as security advisor. And I know the Dr. Li Decai, actually, he tried to reach out to them. I think it's a good step. Not just like, oh, you just show up in some conferences and okay, this showing up but not doing some like a deep discussion. I think that would be my discussion, as you mentioned about the people-to-people connect, not just like to the U.S. communities, but also to the Taiwanese communities in the States or Singapore or Japan. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So for me, I think that's if Taiwan want to work with the U.S. and Japan on addressing energy security, I think the first part can be like increasing the because in the future our government would like to increase the uses of natural gas. So I think the LNG in the future, I think there can be the potential cooperation area, like what's already been done, like the Taiwan have already increasing their energy, LNG imports from the US, and also work with Japan to increase LNGs from a third country. But the second thing, I think the second important part, I think, is like Taiwanese government need to think about how can we engage with the newly development, the US or the US-Japan mechanism, like the Asia EDGE. It's already been launched, but we haven't seen, we need to wait for see more content coming up. And if they have more content coming up, we'll see. Because so far, the goal for the Asia EDGE is meet with Taiwan's energy, our Taiwan's requirement. But how can Taiwan to engage in that mechanism? I think is an important part for Taiwanese government. And also the other mechanism, for example, like the Japan-US Strategic Energy Partnership, which already been launched in November 2018. So this partnership is to facilitate investment in LNG supply and infrastructure projects. So it also meets with our Taiwanese government, our needs. But we need to think about how can we, because we also need to wait to see the more content for this partnership and see how can we engage with that. So I think we need to, Taiwanese government to maintain the communication with the US and Japan and see how can we participate more with their partnership mechanism.
Yeah, there's obviously a real need for the government, as well as for the American government, to take a leadership role in expanding awareness of these security issues in order for mitigation efforts to continue or to grow. But I'm also wondering, as I was reading your papers in our editing process, a question that kept coming up was how effective are the measures to get individuals involved actually working? Like, so you talked about fact checkers. Do people actually use the fact checkers, or do they simply like scroll through the headlines and see something outrageous and it just gets filed in their brain?
So I would probably turn that back on you and the other people in the room and ask how many of you know disinformation when you scroll by it. The New York Times had this like online interactive a couple of months ago that was, can you identify the disinformation? And it presented different pictures and you had to click which one was which. And it's easy to teach people how to identify a message that is manipulative, but it's harder, I think, to get people to realize when there is a coordinated pattern of state-endorsed activity that's trying to affect how they vote or affect how they view a relationship such as the one with China. And I do think that there's also probably somewhat of a societal divide between the people that are maybe more adept at using technology and more familiar with how these apps work and how they share information on the apps. They may be more or less even predisposed to being educated, whereas some of the people that use Line in particular are oftentimes of an older generation, and they just don't have a sense of what is true and what is false, and if it's false, if it's being actively disseminated. So then you just have people that are hitting sort of retweet or forwarding or recirculating without really thinking about it, and that's a huge challenge. Not just, I think, with disinformation, but also cybersecurity is how you teach people to have this mindset of greater awareness and greater security for their own data, not just the information that they intake, I think. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, too.
I mean, yeah, actually one thing I noticed was that when you showed us the chart tracking from Chen Shui-bian to Tsai Ing-wen's administration, the long process it has taken to reach where Taiwan is today in cybersecurity administration, it's very hard to move forward, it seems, if it's such a long process.
Well, yeah, it's been like 2 decades.
Yeah.
But it's evolving. I think when I dig into those documents, I think it's making some progress. I mean, the environment's changing, so it's so different right now. And you have, I mean, smartphones, it's totally changed people's lives. IoT now. So now it's like a phase 5 program. But you see that there's a continuation of this, and it has bipartisan, it's on bipartisan basis. So I would say that no matter who win next year, I think this area, it still will be, I mean, and especially there's a Department of Cybersecurity right now, which is a very good step forward. Before, there was only an office at the hawk level, and I was working in the government before I knew how, I mean, it's bureaucracy, so everything is quite slow, right? But at least you have this Department of Cybersecurity, you have some like center setting up that could, we're talking about workforce, right? So you have human capabilities, and they have a technological capabilities, so they can, I think, yeah, I'm optimistic about that, yeah. Even though it's like a long process. Yeah.
What will it take to get these government officials to stop using Line for private communications?
Wow, it's, I don't think, yeah, they will stop, but they have to find out a mechanism to manage this. I mean, there's a term for this, right? Bring your own device, BYOD, sorry, yeah. Yeah, BYOD, and everyone has their smartphones with them in the Mainland Affairs Council. And I mean, probably not in NSC, yeah, but, and the government just use that as the media. I mean, the channel to communicate with each other, and it's more efficient. Like Cohen, he's very good at it, to use that app to communicate with his team. But there's a risk in this. So how should the government manage this? It's a very important question. Yeah, it's hard to deal with. Yeah.
Yes. And Chensheng, your area is a little different because we've been aware of the importance of saving energy for many more decades than cybersecurity and disinformation have really become the problems there today. But there are so many new technologies like the smart grid, the smart meters that you mentioned. How long will it take before those are a part of daily life in Taiwan, that people see their real-time monitoring of their energy usage and make choices to reduce or change their habits?
You mean
Do you
how long it will take the
Yeah,
people
I think
to...
in your paper you mentioned like soon there will be 3 million smart meters
Yeah, but
installed.
yeah, I think it's for our government actually it's the ambitious targets, because it also rely highly skilled technologies for the government to install the smart meter, and also they need to make the public to understand what exactly the smart meter work, and how can we compare with the differences between the traditional one and the smart one. And because also this is a high technologies one, so which means the user also need to understand how to use that technology, especially if you don't have any knowledge about that. It may make you difficult to say, okay, how can I monitor the real-time electricity that I use? So I think that it also reflects the challenges in how can we engage for the public to address energy security. Because energy, for me, I think energy is a complicated issue, and sometimes you also have the technical, you need to understand the technical side of the energy, but also the policy side of the energy. So the government, I think it reflects the important, like I say again, is the energy literacy. Our government needs to think about how can we promote the attractive and easily understanding energy literacy material for the public, especially we think about a young generation. Because young generations without energy literacy, they probably will have the misconception about the energy issue, and this will create like the habits when they grow up as an adulthood. So maybe they will have a misinterpretation of the energy issues and maybe will not support the more sustainable energy policy. So, and also, with our government, I think not only the smart meter, I think the government needs to let our public to understand the relative policy that they can involve in. Apart from the smart meter, actually there's the other policy. I think it's really good, but still need to make the public to understand. Actually, we are trying to promote the community-owned renewable energy projects, which we can enable the public to invest. You can invest the renewable energy. And you can just invest your money in renewable energies, and you can let the system operator to help you to run for renewable energy, like a solar PV, for example. So I think though this project is still in the starting process, but I think it's important to make more Taiwanese public to understand, yes, actually we have some good option. We have some projects, we have some policies, smart meter, and also community-owned renewable energy project that we can involve in together to solve the energy security problem together. So I think it's important challenges for the Taiwanese government and they need to consider to address it.
Thank you. We will take questions from the audience now. Sorry, that went on a little long. If you could wait until the microphone reaches you, that would be great. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Leo Bosner, and thanks to all for a great panel. A question about disinformation and how to get people to understand it better. I read recently an article that said that in Finland, they're being just bombarded with disinformation from Russia. And according to the article, the Finns have begun high school level courses where the students have, as part of the regular high school curriculum, studying about disinformation, how do you recognize it? So they become educated, so it's not something just at a certain few information officers. So is that anything that Taiwan does, or is that something that might work?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for your question. And it's actually something I overlooked in mentioning, so I'm glad you asked. There is a digital literacy curriculum that was introduced under the Thai administration that is being rolled out. The challenge with high school curriculums in Taiwan is that they are a little bit political. And so if the administration changes in 2020 and there's a flip to the KMT or even an independent candidate, it's hard to say whether that curriculum could be sustained. But for now, they are trying to teach digital literacy, how to recognize disinformation, those sorts of things at the high school level.
Maybe in addition to the question just asked, I'd like to point out that in the Netherlands, they also had some problems with disinformation in the past time. And there has been a project at the University of Leiden there where university journalism students actually, as a part of their curriculum, have to do some fact-checking about recent news. So it's going very well there, and I was wondering whether you would consider that a viable solution for the disinformation problem in Taiwan.
Thank you. So that was something that I saw mentioned when I was doing my research as a possibility. I don't think it's been formally rolled out, but I think there's some concerns with traditional media in Taiwan across the board. Many of them are very closely tied to China. Not many, but there's a portion. And I think that for there to be standards set, such as requiring journalist students to do fact-checking, is feasible. Again, under the current administration, I don't know if it's sustainable. But thinking through that problem of how to teach the journalism sector the importance of countering disinformation is something that I think is still an open question. I personally would like to see them dealing with more, just because there are media outlets that spew disinformation somewhat consciously and are paid to do so. But I don't think they've come to a systematic resolution on this yet. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Mark Magnier with the South China Morning Post. By the way, if the Taiwan media is pretty wild and woolly, so good luck on the education front there. I wanted to ask you, well, a lot of this was sort of the general threat to Taiwan. Can you address the issue of the upcoming election a little bit? Are you seeing a huge increase in some of the assaults? Are they using any different tactics? Anything you can say about this particular exercise in democracy? Thank you.
So I'm going to give an underwhelming answer and suggest that maybe you try and feel out Facebook and Twitter to see what they're sensing or observing. The challenge is identifying coordinated behaviors that are intentionally disseminating disinformation. I think that other people, including a recent foreign policy piece, have identified bots and accounts and Facebook groups that spew disinformation or fake news, propaganda. But to identify disinformation as a coordinated state-backed activity is something that I'm not comfortable doing. And again, I would probably suggest you talk to Facebook. I don't think it's unreasonable based on what was found in Hong Kong, the 9 Facebook groups and the 900 and some odd Twitter accounts. But again, they're going to be the ones that are looking at the patterns. I'm not currently doing that.
Has there been an increase in cyber attacks around election time? Not disinformation, but just efforts, malware or viruses? I'm curious.
Well, as far as I know, there's no like latest data available. I mean, during this time because it's just, sorry, yeah. But I'm sure that the government agencies are watching closely, and I see that there's a triad system, because there was the data breach like recently came out in the Ministry of Civil Service, and so just a few months ago, yeah, and that was, but they tried to use this system to test it and to see if I think it's a good lesson, yeah. But for the disinformation or social media, I guess, like YouTube, maybe it's all the videos on the current the candidates. I mean, you see the messages below, very interesting, and you just one easy one. Thank you. I mean, simplified Chinese and traditional characters are different, so that's a sign, and you can tell that whether, usually the most like whether it's from China or, but it's hard to tell. Someone maybe from Taiwanese IP, and they try to pretend they're mainland Chinese and they're using the simplified Chinese character to say something against someone. So life is very complicated right now. But so in terms of media literacy, I think it's making it harder. But yeah, I mean, but it's very interesting, especially I'm sure in the coming 4 months to see different media outlets, videos, because they have been all digital. They go on a digital, right? All the TVBS or China Times or what, all major media, Liberty Times, their videos are available online. You can see the messages below, and to get some sense of whether there's some interference from outside. Thank you.
Could I ask you a follow-up question, Bo-Jun?
Okay.
I was actually curious your sense of the cybersecurity of the elections themselves. So that's something that we talk a lot about here in the US, like how safe are our voting machines? For people that aren't familiar with how Taiwan votes, is the way that they vote more secure? Like, I'd be curious to hear your thought on that.
Who controls the election machinery? Because the problem here, it's 48 states, and any time you suggest the feds get involved, you start getting all the states' rights issues. At least some people raise them. So how's the machinery work even to control the election? And do you have any indication that the Chinese, the mainland, would like to manipulate results to get the candidate they want elected?
Very good question. And I want to welcome you all to Taiwan to observe the election, because we have a very, if you go, let me know. It's a very traditional way of voting mechanism and system is very different with the U.S. It's not high tech. I mean, it's very traditional. It's so people have to, we go to the polling station with our ID card, and they check it very seriously, and you get the paper and you stamp on that. So it's a very, very traditional way. It's not like the e-voting system. So that part is hard to hack, I think. But
yeah, because we have people to count the votes.
Right.
At the end of 1 vote, 2 votes.
Exactly, and Taiwan is so democratic that voters will be willing to spend their time to go to the polling station to check if if the counting is correct, right? So if people from the green, from the blue, from other colors party camp, they just go and count. So it's hard to cheat, but I guess the key point will be the counting, the computer, the internet, right? The central election commission, whether that system will stay safe and not be able to attack and so I guess I'm sure actually it's been practiced many times but for the voting part is quite safe, but for the counting part I think it's it's not risky, not very risky, but I'm sure that all the IT people, those 600 cybersecurity professionals will be focusing on that because, if there's a problem there, there will be harmful for the democracy. Sorry.
I'm so lucky for the last question. I have a question to Jingbo. In addition to the last question, if there's one day cyber war between China and Taiwan, like Russia and Estonia, how do you think Taiwan prepare for it, and how do you think U.S. will involved in it? This is my question. Cyber war. Yeah. So, for example, Chinese PLA cyber force, they attack the cyber infrastructure in Taiwan. How Taiwan cope with this?
So I mentioned in my presentation that there is the newly founded, the ICEF, in the force service in the ROC Armed Force, and I think it's a good move because you need some kind of group of experts in the military to deal with the POA's attack because it happens every day and the number is like very significant, right? To attack the Taiwan's NSA, National Security Agency, there's like 230,000 per month, so it's quite frequent. And I think that Taiwan's army is ready. I mean, they have allocated more resources to this, and it's already happening. So. But the problem is like there's still like the workforce, the shortage of talented people everywhere. So how the military can recruit these people and train them well and get them equipped with the top-notch knowledge or equipment, I think that's key. And in terms of the U.S., I guess that's just my guess. I mean. The Gctf framework, there's one workshop on network security, and they invited people from the U.S., from Washington, Department of Homeland Security, to go to Taiwan and to have some kind of training. So, and I guess that U.S. Taiwan have already cooperated in that. It's not like something new, but yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you to the three authors for traveling from both long and short distances. Thank you so much for participating in this project, and I hope you all enjoy reading the ebook. Thank you.
Hey, how are you? It's great to see you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for Ronnie for I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, I'm glad to see your presentation. I was worried because I was late.
I mean last one. The good thing is the last one, and because I think energy is complicated issue. I just try to think about whether the audience can understand that the policy, what the challenge is.
So you mentioned that, of course, if some conflict in South China Sea occurred, then
Yeah.
everyone, right?
Yeah, if that happened, but
But then, so, because you were thinking about that, then don't you think about, what Taiwan and other countries can do in that?
If you mean there's a conflict? I think if there's a conflict, because I think the percentage is really low. For example, like Taiwan Strait and South China Sea. I think South China Sea is hard to be that conflict or block because there are too much country in that region there's too much countries engaged in.
So it will be a concern for everybody. Right?
Yeah, it will be a concern. But I think Taiwan Strait is also possible if the Chinese want to invade Taiwan or damage Taiwan, you can block the Taiwan Strait because some of our LNG import will also cross Taiwan Strait.
So Taiwan is importing energy from China, right? Some sort of coal.
In the past, but